Good evening. My name is Ryder Goodwin, and I'm a junior at Brewer High School. In my high school career, I've been a participant in football, basketball, and lacrosse. It gives me great pleasure to tell you about 2020 Hall of Fame inductee Steve Tardiff. Mr. Tardiff, Brewer High School class of 1969, was an outstanding student athlete and class leader. He was a member of Key Club, National Honor Society, Dirigo Boys State, Junior Exhibition Master of Ceremonies, and class officer. As a quarterback and defensive back for the Witches, Mr. Tardiff led Brewer to its first undefeated Maine Class A state championship in school history. Leading up to the championship win over South Portland, Mr. Tardiff had two pivotal plays to secure victories. He scored the winning touchdown to defeat unbeaten and favored Edward Little High School, and in the following week, intercepted a pass with 15 seconds remaining to defeat Biddeford High School, snapping their 28-game unbeaten streak. As a senior point guard and co-captain of the basketball team, he led the Witches in assists and points, serving as a role model for his younger teammates. Mr. Tardiff was a standout outfielder for the Witches. From 1967 to 1969, he was a driving force behind Brewer baseball's 3-year 48-10 record. During his junior and senior years, he batted over 300 and led the Witches to their first Penobscot Valley Conference championship since 1960. Mr. Tardiff finished off his baseball career at the University of Maine, earning his varsity M letter his senior year. Mr. Tardiff retired after working over 30 years as a division manager for Philip Morris. He and his wife of 47 years, Noreen, have 3 grown children. At this time, I am honored to introduce Rick Frank to present Steve Tardiff for induction into the Brewer High School Hall of Fame.
Good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, I am Rick Franks, and if you'll indulge me for just a couple of seconds, I'd like to briefly recognize and honor every one of this year's inductees. Your accomplishments are truly significant, and you're now a part of a very select and elite group of Brewer High School student athletes, coaches, and contributors. So congratulations to you all. It's now my privilege to share with you a few thoughts and words about one of this year's Hall of Fame inductees, and that would be Steve "Peanut" Tardiff. Steve and I, we've been friends and classmates and teammates for a very long time. We first met when we were 8 years old, and we were both selected to play Brewer Little League Baseball on the same team. At Brewer High School, Steve not only excelled at athletics, but he also was a student academic leader, including being selected as a delegate to Dirigo Boys State, and he was also a member of the National Honor Society. Over the school years, I personally had the opportunity to observe and admire Steve's leadership skills, both as an athlete and as a student leader. As a youth, despite Steve's relative diminutive size and hence the name Peanut, he used his motivation, positive thinking, hard work, skills, abilities, and pure will to live, will to win, to overcome adversity and to become a superior results achiever. He was always very confident in his abilities, and the proof of that is that every team he tried out for, at every level, he was always selected and made the team. Steve always led through his actions, and in addition, he had the ability to command respect and to be a vocal leader when necessary. Regardless of the sport or the score of the game, Steve was always motivated to do his best to win. His focus was on winning, playing hard and tough, sometimes through injuries, and on playing the game the right way. I'd like to share a couple of Steve's football stories with you to prove that point. When we played Edward Little, as was mentioned earlier, during our senior season, they were on a 9-game winning streak, and they were one of the heavily favored teams to compete for the Class A championship. During our first offensive series, Steve somehow got hit or elbowed or something in the nose, and unbeknownst to me, he was bleeding all over my backside. I was the center at the time. After we ran a couple of plays, and a lot of blood had flowed, Roman McSimic finally noticed that there was something happening, and he sent him to the sidelines. But needless to say, before too long, Steve was back into the game. And later in the game, during the fourth quarter, he scored our 2 touchdowns to bring us from behind and to victory. According to the Bangor Daily News, the final touchdown, quote, came on a dancing, twisting 8-yard run that would have put Fred Astaire to shame in his prime. But not resting on his laurels, though, during the next game against Biddeford, Steve pulled off a clutch interception, as mentioned early, in the end zone with only 15 seconds remaining in the game to preserve our 14-12 margin of victory, and thereby helping snap Biddeford's 28-game winning streak. And additionally now, Steve has always been willing to share his knowledge and take time to mentor other teammates, especially our younger teammates who looked up to him. Over the years, I've spoken to guys like Bob Fortier and Jim Libby and Roger Doyon and others who shared with me how they appreciated the tips that Steve had given them and how he always treated them as teammates and equals rather than merely underclassmen. Steve always tried to help others get better and to improve their performance. One more story that comes to mind, and it also speaks to Steve's focus on always being prepared and practicing hard, is that during the preceding summer and all throughout preseason and after every practice, Steve, Dana Corey, and I would put in extra time working on the snap, placement, and kicking of the ball for extra point field goal attempts. And as those of you who may have had the privilege of playing for Coach Perone know, that was a lot of practice. In the end, this extra work paid off. Steve clearly understood that he and the entire football team would only be successful if we focused on what we were doing, because only then were we going to be doing it at our best to the best of our respective abilities when it counted, and that's during the games. In our case, we won the Maine State Class A championship game on a very cold, blustery November day in 1968 by 1 point, a made extra point kick. Hall of Fame member Slip Corey once referred to Steve as being a spark plug and a heady little player, and that he was. And on more than one occasion, my good friend Coach Perone has shared with me that in his opinion, Steve was the second best all-around broad baseball and football player that he had ever seen play. And I believe that's high praise indeed. I'd like to leave all the young student athletes attending the ceremony tonight with one last thought, something that Steve understood very well and that you should always keep in mind. And that is that hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. It's a very valuable lesson and one that's best learned early. And with that being said, I want to give you my longtime friend, teammate, and the very newest member of the Brewer Athletic Hall of Fame, Steve Tardiff.
Being my age, I'm sure that that's why they chose me to be the first one up here. Good evening, fellow inductees, friends, teammates, Hall of Fame supporters, and student athletes. It took a while, but we're here. First, I would like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for selecting me for this very prestigious honor. I am totally grateful, and I am humbled by it. It's particularly an honor to be inducted, not only with my fellow inductees, but with my 1968 teammates. I would like to thank the efforts of Rick Franks, my lifetime friend. He demonstrated a tenacity and follow-up for submitting the nomination and obtaining support from my teammates, friends, in order to get me selected. Thank you, Rick. I would also be remiss if I didn't recognize my steadfast support from Coach Perone during this nominating process. Thanks, Coach. I would like to dedicate this award to my greatest fan, my sister Stephanie, who passed away a few years ago. To those athletes also who competed that were small in stature but big in heart. They hold a special place in my heart since I consider myself one of them. During my playing time, sports in Brewer, we had a tremendous group of coaches, supporters, and there's too many to name here, for our youth sports in Little League, CYO, PAL, and Pop Warner. Those volunteers spent an enormous amount of their personal time not only teaching the fundamentals of sports, but they gave all of the young boys and girls instructions on the importance of teamwork and sportsmanship and how that would help them in life. They explained and gave sound advice to their athletes. I salute those men and women for their commitment and dedication to the youth of Brewer. And there has been many others who have continued with this through the years, many still in this room. They have made this community a very proud and have contributed to the success of the athletics here in Brewer. Growing up in the 60s in Brewer, we didn't have the internet, computers, cell phones, and other diversions that you have today. High school sports was something of a community effort which they followed for entertainment and pride. This was a very important part of Brewer lifestyle, and this was evident by their cheering and enthusiasm with several thousand at Doyle Field. The Brewer community has supported their athletic teams as well as any community in the state. We were very fortunate to have a group of teammates from grade school through high school who were very unselfish, and they were willing to work hard at practicing and focusing at improving their skills at every level. They also included athletes from Orrington, Holden, Eddington, and Dedham. We were successful very early on by winning the 1963 State Little League Championship, and I believe that this formed a bond that carried us all the way through high school with our first football championship and a baseball, not official, championship where we were 23-2. We had very competitive teams in all sports through our high school years, except for basketball. One reason, for example, may be during my junior year, our starting guards were 5'4" and 5'5", and that was John Bartol and myself. And in our senior year, we only had one person that was 6'2". Can you imagine that on a basketball team? I would like to direct my next comments to the student athletes. One of my greatest accomplishments out of high school athletics came to me years after graduation. We used to go back to some of the class reunions from other classes that came up after us and who had played on some of our teams. It was my surprise that several former teammates approached me and thanked me for how I and other seniors treated them during our seasons together. They were very appreciative of the help and respect we showed them in developing their skills and learning the plays. The reason why I tell you this story is that I never felt I was making an impression on them like this. We were just trying to play the sports to the best of our abilities, and we were trying to win every game. Please, try to embrace your actions to help others and treat them as you would want to be treated. You will be a better person, and it will be a positive role model while demonstrating and building the skills of sportsmanship, competitiveness, and pride. All of you here tonight should feel very honored and proud of the tremendous tradition that the City of Brewer high school athletics have brought to this community. Thank you. Continue to maintain and improve Brewer athletics for generations to come. The pride this community is evident by what has gone on and what will go on tonight. Go Witches.